And from the top of West Mountain of Scranton, Pennsylvania, good morning, everybody. This is 94.3 FM, The Talker. Sanity check, Libertarian Lou, Tea Party Mike. The number here is 888-577-4487. If you want to start your weekend off right, blow off a little steam, we got Frank Sark in the studio. Michael, good morning.
Good morning. I'm just here looking at my computer, and I'm looking at San Antonio Mayor Julian Castro.
Your favorite.
My favorite, and as many of you probably already know, he was nominated to be the new HUD, the Housing and Urban Development Secretary in Washington. So we have a new one in Washington showing up, and why is this significant? And I want to see if the listeners remember, about maybe 6 months ago, I told them one of the insiders here told me that Julian Castro will be Hillary Clinton's running mate. So this is just a positioning of the Obama administration to put this man into a better political position to run for a position as vice president. So I just want to let people keep an eye on this guy. He is really here in San Antonio. He's done really the mirror look-alike as Barack Obama. He has now driven a speed train through San Antonio, which they're fighting. It's $1 billion project for only 5 miles, and yet this is, and again, just like Obamacare, the people are against this rail, including the fire department and the unions, and yet he's still pushing to get this through. He's also pushing to have the young women in San Antonio, ages 13 to 18, to be injected with Depo-Provera, which is a birth control mechanism, which is just the same agenda, to be able to make sure that all our women get proper birth control. So I just want to let people aware, look out for Julian Castro, because he's the new Washington on the scene, Lou.
I heard that, Michael, and they were talking about him having a national stage. As we started our radio show, Beds Are Burning, that's what I felt like coming into the studio today. You and me were talking right up to the last minute. Sark is in here. We had all kinds of different things going on this past week. Obviously, we had the Pennsylvania primary and very, very low turnout. We're going to talk about that. We also had WBRE, Frank, right? Yes. WBRE, Michael, and I know you were aware of this, and we might as well talk about this a little bit right off the start here. WBRE broke a story that the Wilkes-Barre City Hall email system was hacked into, and that the FBI was looking into this. Mike, you know as well as certainly Frank Sark, you were right in the middle of this, yes. Frank, that back in December we were part of that. And Frank...
I'm a witness for the FBI.
You're a witness for the FBI. And we were asked to keep this thing under wraps for a while, but finally when BRE broke this, we came out and we talked about how we have known about this once again, and then we kind of broke the story wide open. I think, Frank, you just said Joe Holden wants to know if we're going to release the emails.
Yeah, everybody's asking. WNEP, BRE, Joe Holden, formerly of BRE, is asking, are we going to publish the
Except
email?
for that one shock jock that's around here.
Yeah,
I don't even want to mention his name because
I'm an irresponsible journalist.
Yeah.
I mean, we're waiting for the lawyer's opinion as to whether or not we can publish the emails. We didn't just jump the gun and publish them, so I'm irresponsible.
So, I mean, but besides all that, once again, it's, where you... unless you're part of the AP, supposedly, that great AP that bought and paid for AP, we don't get any kind of real news. And thank goodness, Michael, for people like ourselves, whether it's the Independent Gazette or Sanity Check Radio, or locally we have Antonello. We have a number of people out here, and people could at least pick and choose where they can get their news a little bit more and more. And certainly I'm glad that people are maybe looking at what some of these other folks are saying, or even the AP starting to question, because certainly polling, if we want to believe the polling in the United States, that most folks are not even believing what they're getting from most of their mainstream media. So with that, Frank, and so we could kind of fill in, Michael, a little bit what's went on here locally. The first thing we need to lay out here is, once again, the Independent Gazette was informed of hacked emails. The emails Correct. That were, and they didn't come to us. They actually came to another individual that was part of the eventual FBI sting, which we will not mention and we will not name, only because they have asked to remain anonymous.
Right.
But at the end of the day, that's how that whole thing went down. And we did get those emails, and we have seen the emails, and and that's what everybody, we have emails from Mr. Layton.
And other city officials, not just Layton. And some of them are a few of them are of normal city business. Let's just say that.
And some are very salacious, as I would say.
Some are, yes.
Right. Things that you would not be appropriate for city business. But once again...
Some that wouldn't be appropriate for FCC guidelines. We'd be kicked off the radio if we read some of them right here.
That is absolutely correct.
You're the producer. You'd say, Frank, stop reading that.
So anyway, Michael, it was a relatively big story, certainly for us, since we posted it. It's one of the most, gone through stories on our website. So we're proud to do what we're doing in the way we did, and we were asked just to hold back for that because eventually it was all going to come out. It wasn't something that had to get printed immediately.
No, it
wasn't anything that was time sensitive that we had to get out there. But once again, it was people had come and given us information.
It's still an ongoing investigation,
and it's an ongoing investigation. So we're using proper judgment as we continue to. One of the things I almost fell off my chair, Michael, because I want to talk about this here a little bit. But Zorek says maybe we need to ask a lawyer whether we should print. I said ask a lawyer.
The Independent Gazette solicitor.
We need a lawyer and a lawyer to ask the lawyer. Our society has gotten so far here that is everything we do. Is everything have to go through these eyes of the lawyers that, Mike, in my opinion, a lot of these things don't make, they just make things up anyway. So no matter what's going on. Just recently, my uncle died and he had a will. So my mom is the executor of the will, right? So she brings the will to the lawyer and this could mean that. I'm thinking, how simple are these things? I mean, is it, everything is... Is there anything anymore in society to where when you write something down, when you shake somebody's hand, when you have a meeting of the minds, does anything mean anything anymore, or is it just that no matter what you say, what is what's going on here, Michael?
Well, it's such a litigious society, and Frank, you know that as well as any of us, and it's so difficult to get anything done today because of, having to dot every I and cross every T. And as you said, Lou, when the handshake was certainly more than enough in binding, today it's misconstrued. The language is so important in the way it's put down, the way we speak, because it's just really picked at and noticed at every moment to be able to manipulate the word, Lou. The intent is this, and yet they manipulate. We're seeing that with the Constitution, Lou. We see that perfectly with the Constitution, where all of us know what the intent of our founders were, and yet they want to continue to spin it to make this a more progressive society. So these are the challenges we have today, and we've got to work around them. So until we find a way out of this and get rid of half the attorneys in America, or at least their control of America, then we're going to have to continue to work with them. So it's difficult to be able to do it and swallow our pride on a regular basis. But we really need to make that maybe one of our focal points, maybe an article in the newspaper, to expose what is going on in America today.
Well, we are, especially with the courts. The courts are a cesspool of corruption, and I don't care. The more we dig into this, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, Michael. And when we bring X on the next segment, we're going to talk about the low voter turnout, what's happening in the courts, why the things are going on the way they're going on. But next month, we're going to be at the Libertarian National Convention. And I think this is a conversation that we all need to have. And we talked a little bit, Mike, before we came on, and today maybe a little bit more philosophical than instead of just digging always into specific topics, Frank and Mike, and certainly with X. But the theme of the Libertarian National Convention, which we're going to talk a little bit more on how they pick their candidates, why things happen the way why they're happening. But the theme is character matters. And it just got my attention and was inspired by Lawrence Reed. And he wrote a book, Are We Good Enough for Liberty? And what he said was, without character, a free society is not just unlikely, it's impossible. So I want to keep coming back to that all day tonight, or or today as we're talking on the radio. Does character matters? When we talk about the primary system, when we talk about what's happening in the VA with health care and jury nullification, and what we're talking about with all these lawyers, character is what we are. I mean, we could throw all these books, all the laws on the books that we want, but if we don't stand for something, and if we don't have character, if we don't have some, moral, fortitude, does it matter? And have we lost that? I mean, Frank,
I heard a good quote the other day that I think fits here. If you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything.
I remember that. I thought I heard that song somewhere. Didn't we have this and that? We don't stand for well, we'll think about that one. Michael, what do you think?
Well, Lou, your point is very valid. I mean, you go all the way back to the Clinton days and the things that he did, and yet it's overlooked, and he gets, $250,000 talking fees. You look at what's going on in Washington and how so many of these people, including folks who work in the IRS, don't pay their taxes. Because we as a society have lost that moral fiber. That, everybody does that. But we shouldn't accept it so easily, especially amongst our leaders. And we just let it pass. And we have somebody like Clinton and others who have really done things that, Lou, back when we were growing up, 50s, 60s, 70s, they would have been thrown out immediately and mocked for what they did. But today they're celebrating for what they did. And I think we really need to take a step up morally, and really demand better from our leaders.
Well, we need to challenge, and I want to challenge people that are listening to this show, and it's 888-577-4487. You're listening to Sanity Check. But we need to start challenging everybody, Michael, and saying, if there's unconstitutional laws on the books, if we see what's not right, when do we stand up and say enough is enough? I mean, we talked about Senator Baker here, not the last couple weeks or whatever, with what's happening with Senator Smucker and free and equal elections. We know what is going on is not right. When do we say, or when do you say, when do I say, when does Frank say, when do the people that are listening say, this is just unacceptable anymore, and we're going to tie this into this low voter turnout and all these other things. And when go ahead, Frank.
How do you fight something like that, Lou? When for instance, in Pennsylvania, the police may now search your vehicle per the Pennsylvania High Court. They may search your vehicle just because the officer feels like it. He doesn't need a warrant anymore. He pulls you over and says, Mr. Jesikoff, get out of the car. I want to search your vehicle. You may or may not have anything in there. It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
You had a taillight out. I want to see if you have any spare taillights in your glove box. I'm going to search.
And this goes back to, Michael, with what's the cesspool in the courts and the lack of our certainly legislate and the lack of our legislators to have any backbone. And that's when we say, is the party system, is this two-party system doing what is designed to do? I mean, Frank, that's just one perfect example where we say, wait a minute, when do we stop, Michael? And when do we say, listen, are we going to continue to do what we're doing? But the only people that could rein in the judiciary is not going to be the judiciary. It's going to be the actual legislature who is probably even putting some of these laws on the books.
I just look at this and I say, how do you throw out the United States Constitution and the Pennsylvania Constitution when issuing a ruling? Like, where did this judge come from? What planet did they? I'm at a loss for words with this person.
Michael, go ahead.
Well, Frank, I think it's just pure ignorance. They don't, a lot of these do know, but some of them, when I look at our lawmakers, and I'm sure all of us have had these discussions with constitutions with our lawmakers, sometimes I get that starry-eyed look at, like, what are you talking about? There's not even a rebuttal, because it's like as if it's the first time they've heard that concept before. And this is what's so scary to me, because how do we expect people to represent us when they don't even know what they're representing, Frank?
Right.
And this is why we, I'm really sorry to hear about the low voting turnout. I understand it, but right now it's the last thing we should be doing. I don't care if you're voting for somebody completely outside, the two-party system, probably the better that we do. But get up and vote for someone, because it is so important, or have write-ins. We can do that. If you think there's somebody in your community and you can get enough, write them in. We have options yet. until they take those away. So, please vote.
We're going to talk about the voting, Michael. You see, if you were part of the Moose Club or the Elks Club this past Tuesday, or we could name it the Donkey Club and the Elephant Club, you were allowed to vote. I wasn't allowed to vote. I couldn't vote. I couldn't participate. And if I remember correctly, we fought one revolution once before, no taxation without representation. When we come back, we're going to have Michael. We're going to continue this conversation.
Sanity Check with Tea Party Mike, Libertarian Lou, Saturday mornings, 94.3 FM The Talker.
Some nights I stay up, cashing in my bad luck. Some nights I call it a draw. Some nights I wish that my lips could build a castle. Some nights I wish they just fall off. But I still wake up, I still see your gospel. Lord, I'm still not sure what I stand for. Oh, what do I stand for? What do I stand for? Most nights I don't know anymore.
And we're back. 94.3 FM to talk of this Sanity Check. Frank, that was for you and for Charlotte Ropp. How you like that?
What do you stand for?
What do we stand for? And unfortunately, so many people these days, at least the way we're looking at it, Michael, sometimes an X you're on. We didn't even play your lead in today. And Frank, what are people standing for? And I think that's real important. I think that's going to be the theme of our show today. What do people stand for? And is it important to stand for what is right, not necessarily for party affiliation? We got Lou from Greeley on the line. I want to get you in, Lou. Good morning.
I do love that song. Have you ever seen the video for that?
Oh, we actually just a few minutes ago. Absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah.
What's on your mind
turnout
this morning?
Low voter turnout.
Yes.
Our district. Now, the latest numbers the latest I could get was like November of 2008. There were 37,054 registered Republican and Democrats. Nobody else can play.
Thank you, Lou.
But
I can't play.
No, you can't play. You're not allowed in the sandbox until November. But anyway,
wait a minute, Lou.
Our total turnout in the primary, our total turnout for Pike County was 37,054 in 2008. Our total turnout on Tuesday was 2,683.
Wow.
Disgusting. Now, Lou, I want to correct you here for a minute. Lou is from
Wyoming, so I wasn't in Lackawanna, so I could have vote yes or no,
right.
And I could have went in there and pulled the lever for yes or no,
right?
And I think that was one of the problems with this whole thing. But Lou, you're talking to Betsy Summers, who is a judge of elections in Wilkes-Barre. The same thing. I mean, under 10% of the people showed up to vote.
Yeah.
And I have a theory about that, and that's one of the things that I want to talk about. Certainly, I've heard other people suggest this, and I'm going to suggest this to folks that, you know what, maybe it's time to send a message to the Elks and the Moose Club, i.e. the donkey and elephant parties, that we've had enough. I mean, we have to start doing things that are constitutional. We know this primary, closed primary, the way it's set up is not right. I was on a radio show with another host this past week, Lou, and she had suggested that perhaps, they'd be open to an open primary. And I said, hey, listen, I'm not even suggesting open primaries. Republicans and Democrats should be able to elect those. If they're part of that party, they should be able to elect those that they want to elect without having interference from people outside of their party. But it shouldn't be done on the backs of other taxpayers. And I think that's a legitimate gripe. But until people start ripping their cards up, and I'm going to suggest this. We're going into Memorial Day. People that have fought for our rights. I say this all the time, Lou. We go over there, to fight for free and equal elections, and yet here, I want people that are registered Republican and Democrat right now to think about what happens if they were not allowed to vote, if they were not allowed to participate. other veterans that are not part of these clubs, that they were not allowed to participate. Is that right? I mean, when do we find, and the only reason it continues to go on is because we allow it. And Michael, that's what we were saying before. We allow this to continue to go on. By participating in these unconstitutional events, i.e. the primary. You, Lou, me, Lou, Mike, Frank, everybody that may want to participate in these things, what we're doing is we're putting our seal of approval on it, and until we send a message to our legislature and say this is fundamentally wrong. This is what we go to. This is what we're going overseas for, supposedly to fight for free elections over there. When do we finally say enough? When do we call Senator Baker on the carpet and say thank you for co-sponsoring the bill? But when do you go to Senator Smucker and say this is disgusting? I can't be part of this group anymore if you continue to support these unconstitutional initiatives. Lou, go ahead. I'll let you finish up, and then we'll let you go.
Oh, that was about it. The establishment won in our district. Establishment won big time. And we even had, Virginia and I were running for the Republican committee,
right?
The county committee.
Did you make it? You made it, right?
We got crushed.
You got crushed. Come on, really?
We got crushed. We even had. By we I say conservative. We had 2 incumbents on the committee, and they got thrown out. Wow. Yeah.
And you guys have been active in supporting all the, Luke.
We've been trying.
You guys always keep trying. You guys keep up the good fight, the Patriot Connectors, and you are, is it the second Thursday? Second
Thursday, yep.
All right,
7 to 9 at the Wallenpaupack High School Library.
We'll see you guys up there. Thanks, Lou, for calling in. X, let me bring you in on the conversation. So far, what are you thinking?
Well, I'm thinking about the fact that the voter turnout is so low. And if an organized group of people get together, they don't need to have the overwhelming numbers that they did before in order to cause a real change.
That's right.
And there's a big thing with the free state movement where a lot of people are like, well, let's all move to New Hampshire so that way we can influence the elections. Well, you've got the power within your hands if you just take it up and use it. What it does is it shows that most people are so busy that the idea of civic duty isn't even on their radar. And also maybe there's a lot of voter apathy because the system is.
I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure people in school these days understand what civic duty is. Do they teach civics anymore? I mean, I'm out of that system. My children are grown and my grandchildren are just getting back into this.
I guess it's the question of what they're actually being taught in the schools from what you think it is.
You mean those state-run schools? Let's call them. You mean the state-run schools?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, I've always loved the idea of social studies. I mean, is this going to be something about, women oppression or something like that? Or is this how to run a country and, become part of your community so that you make the world a better place, so to speak? But, again, let's just take a step back and think about, what's the farce in terms of voting right now? John Conyers, who is the congressman who has been in power for 50 years.
Yeah, this is great.
50 years. He failed to get on the ballot because the people that were going around collecting signatures for him, there were a number of problems with them collecting enough signatures. And he was kicked off the ballot. So, of course, he appeals, and a federal judge comes down with a ruling that somehow, despite all the laws that we've put in place, he somehow is granted an exception. Now, this reminds me of maybe about 6 or 7 years ago when in New Jersey, Frank Torricelli,
remember that?
When the Democrats realized he would not get reelected because of his criminal
activities
background.
Yep.
They immediately took him off the ballot and substituted Frank Lautenberg for his place. Now, again, the court stepped in and decided, even though this is completely against all of the laws in place, that we are going to, again, make an exception for you, and they put Frank Lautenberg on ballot. But this kind of goes to show you this idea that laws are not created to, let's say, create this level playing field. What they're designed to do, and this almost applies to 95% of every law we encounter, is the laws are designed to create barriers to entry to prevent other groups besides the establishment, the Coke and Pepsi, so to speak, from coming up and displacing them. So the election laws will apply if you're a third party or independent. But if you're a Republican or Democrat and something happens, it doesn't matter. We'll get rid of the laws for that.
Oh, but X, we are a nation of laws. I hear that all the time.
Well,
we are a nation of laws.
To keep you in control, whereas the laws don't apply to us. And then let's go back to that, what you were talking about earlier. You know, how can we get to this point in time? Think about something as simple as we've created a constitution that is designed to limit the scope and power of government. And every single year, more and more of those powers are eroded in favor of another reason why the government should have some sort of intrusion into an area where maybe just 10 or 5 years ago it had no jurisdiction.
Yeah.
So the question that we have over and over again is, you know, you're sitting here and you're shaking your head about limitations and so forth. The answer is, you know, the state always wants more power, and it will get it in any way, shape, or form that it can, always under the guise of fear, always under the guise of special interest, always under the guise of, well, if we punish this big bank for doing illegal activities, that might cost jobs. So we can't put them out of business. But God forbid if you're running drugs out of like a donut shop, you're out of business. It's a crazy thing. You know, the thing is, if your business is above a certain size, you're too
almost big.
Immune.
You're too big to get prosecuted.
Too big to fail.
Michael, we're a nation of laws. Don't you know that? We are. What was Fast and Furious? Is that nation of laws? How about our immigration laws? We have immigration laws. We are. This is what drives me crazy. Absolutely drives me crazy. I hear it all the time. We are a nation of laws. We have those. Good. Are we a nation of laws, or do we have a bunch of despots that are just there that, you know, they speak the laws as they see fit, Michael?
Well, Lou, I think it goes right back to what we've been really pushing over the last several months, is that we are a nation of laws. Unfortunately, we have a judiciary that really use the laws in their favor, no matter how it is. If they've got a friend that needs, as X talking about, to get back on the ballot, change the laws.
Yeah, let's just get a federal judge.
Sure.
Let's shop this one around.
Yeah. If we have a group of parents who really the courts have decided their children should no longer be theirs, well, we'll just change the laws to make sure that it benefits whatever corruption there happens.
Yeah. We don't need cameras in the courtrooms. We can trust what's going on in our courtrooms. Michael, what are you talking about?
Exactly. I mean, here's what I'm proposing, that we have a write-in for Lou Jasikoff, political position. That's what I'm proposing.
Hey, we're going to propose that now that the primaries are done, I think 50% of the individuals running are running unopposed. What we are going to suggest, Michael, is that people start ripping up their voter registration cards. They could go back. They could go back to voting Republican or Democrat. Why don't you rip it up, send it to the Smuckers of the world, and say, listen, until you start becoming a constitutionalist, if you start living up to what you put your hand on the Bible and say what you're saying, here's my registration card, and you're not going to lose that much. You're still able to vote. You're still going to be able to vote in November. You don't really have a primary coming up the next year. So everybody, but if you want to if people really want to start making a difference, this is a very easy difference. Rip your card up, put it in an envelope, and I suggest send it to Smucker or whoever else is down there on the Republican committee that refuses to allow free and equal elections to come out. And say, until you start believing. Go ahead.
I hear about ripping up the cards, and so many of us have to realize, and this is both in the Republican and the Democratic parties, is that we're not even getting a vote because they're already predetermined by the establishment. I look at again Julian Castro. He's been being groomed for probably 4, 5, 6 years now to eventually be running for president. Who's picked him? Not the Democratic Party, not
the union members. Not the guys that are out working. The women are out working.
Right. So really, folks, it's time to wake up to realize that your party is not representing you and your wishes and your desires. It's representing their agendas. So really, maybe it's time that we ask for ripping of cards at both the Democrats and the Republicans and go and find another choice, because this is really where we're at. We have to stop believing really what's going on in our nation. And you see the fear of, and it's happened sometimes here in Texas, is that so many of the, and I was watching TV the other day, so many of the established got back in, where the Tea Partiers didn't, because it's that fear, that old thinking that says, well, you know what, if we vote for that other individual, then we might lose the seat. Who gives a hoot?
Who care anymore?
We don't care anymore. Stop using that logic, because right now we're all being sold down the river, and we have to stop. We have to change, Lou. We have to make a decision that we're no longer going to support a party, but we're going to support a constitution.
Michael, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we got Kathy Dobash on the line. We got all kinds of good stuff coming up. You're listening to Sanity Check, 94.3 FM, The Talker.
4.3 FM, The Talker.
I hope you're starting to hear us now. This is 94.3 FM, The Talker, Sanity Check. Yeah, Krista Branch, remember this, Michael?
Oh, yeah.
And she dedicated this to the Wilkes-Barre Taxpayers Association, and we just happen to have the president of the Wilkes-Barre Taxpayers Association sitting right here, Frank Sorp. But let's bring on Kathy Dobash. Good morning, Kathy.
Hey, good morning. How is everyone?
We're doing great. You just got off of work where do you work? You work in not in the mills. You work in the warehouse. In the warehouse. That's right. Okay. I had one of those brain freezes as I usually have, but that's okay.
That's all right.
What's your words of wisdom today, Kathy?
Pardon?
What's your words of wisdom for us today?
Well, I've been listening to what you're talking about, and we just need a whole big change of leadership, and I don't know where it's going to come from, but the county council has some issues. I mean, we've had increased taxes over 10% since 2012, and then we found out that in the first quarter of this year, there was overspending of $3.8 million, so I don't know what the manager's going to say. But I think we need a change of leadership, and it's not what Mr. Bobeck asked for. It's for a change of leadership. We need a new manager. Perhaps maybe things will go back to county code if things don't improve.
Kathy, I was just going to warn you about speaking out. I mean, as you know, Ed Berminski keeps speaking out, and Bobeck is doing everything he can to silence him. I can't help but think.
Oh, well, he's just having a temper tantrum because he didn't like that we asked for the resignation of the manager, so this is his payback.
Hey, Kathy. Hey, Michael, I want to talk a little bit about the taxes because Kathy brought that up because that's one of the reasons, Michael, you remember 2 years ago you warned Luzerne County Council exactly what would happen. And once again, you as a producer have picked up and moved because you're saying, wait a minute, you can't afford the taxes and certainly where they're heading with all these taxes. But Kathy, we were at one of the meetings here last week, and I think we mentioned this last week too, but I got to tell you, I thought the questions, you should be really proud of some of the questions that you asked, and as chair of that committee, I thought you asked some very relevant questions, and one of those questions was certainly on SB 76, the property tax reform bill, and I'm not even sure how this all worked into why you were even talking about it at council, but you brought up the fact that Hauk and Harry Haas both were PSEA members, and all you asked, Kathy, was
I know what I asked.
But so our listeners know, all you asked was, as being a PSEA member, and they're very much against this bill, did that have anything to do with it? And I found their reaction, that's what I found very, very...
How dare I?
How dare you?
I ask
it's a simple yes or no question. I mean... Obviously, it does matter. I mean, I'm a member of PAR. As a real estate agent,
yes.
I'm a member of the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors. And the PAR is strongly in favor of this. So you'd be hard-pressed to find a realtor who's against this.
And if Kathy asked you the question,
I would say yes. Of course, my membership in PAR
makes a difference,
yes.
And this is why. And that's what I found that was a little, disconcerting about their reaction, Kathy. They didn't say yes or no.
It was like they were hiding that they were PSEA members.
You're
and
exactly.
They didn't want to reveal it because they're the main opponents of this bill.
Michael,
I just wanted to know where they stood and why they were fighting against it. Was it to represent the citizens, or was it to represent that organization?
To represent themselves.
Michael, that was funny because that's exactly what happened. Kathy, thanks for calling in today, and we appreciate your feedback all the time. You're always welcome on the show. But, Michael, that was one of the things that Kathy had brought up, and just the reaction of both Hauk and Haas. It was like, how dare you ask this question? And I was thinking, why not be proud of what you are? Say, yes, I am part of I am a member, and yes or no, it does make, and, this is why
these are the reasons I feel strongly
about this. But once again, it went right to the attack. I just don't understand, what's so wrong with asking these questions. And thank goodness. Sorry, Michael. Thank goodness that people are getting elected like a Kathy Dobash. I think that's the crack. Those are the cracks that certainly encourage us. And we're going to be helping other folks as we move forward into this political process to maybe give them a voice that maybe they can get out there and maybe some more Kathy Dobashes get elected.
Well, it's so important, Lou. I can remember Ms. Hauk when I asked a question about the union contract, and her response was, "You don't seem to understand."
No. We don't know nothing.
We don't understand. And, I looked at her and I said, no, I do understand. It's the fact that you're trying to make sure, belittle my opinion because I'm not in your position. And, I understand just as much about running business and how to make it successful or profitable more than she did. And yet it's always that attack, that taking away your humility to be able to really neutralize you. And I'm happy to have people like Kathy on, and I hope it's a new trend in Luzerne County because, Harry, how could you not be influenced by who you are in making those decisions? And I think Kathy was appropriate in asking that question.
Well, remember, this is Harry. I've never met a tax I didn't like Haas. So.
Hey, Michael, I think what we need to do is we'll ask John DiLiberto to bring this clip to the Luzerne County Council. What's that clip again?
I know nothing, I see nothing, and I say nothing.
This is what they want us to think, that we don't know anything, and yet we ask these solicitors. That's what we always get. Michael, how often do we go to these meetings? Frank, I mean, you said it the other day. You have to file lawsuits. Every question, already. Everywhere we go. So when do we, and for us, certainly, we're encouraging people, to get out there and ask these questions and we know we're going to have barriers.
If for no other reason, just to watch the reaction, watch them squirm in their seat. And they will resort to name-calling, personal attacks. They will do anything they can not to answer the question. I don't care what question you're asking. They don't want to answer it.
But Frank, here's the more important, I think is a very important question, is Harry Haas is certainly not one for low taxes. He's not one for small government. Why is the Republican Party supporting him? Because
that's a good question because, in his first term, I supported Harry. I voted for Harry, and I learned real quick from my mistake. I watched him in action his first year out there, and I thought, oh, my God. And that's it. And I would hope other Republicans would wake up as well.
You're listening to Sanity Check, and our number here is 888-577-4487. And keep going back. Once again, and we will have a booth at the Libertarian National Convention that's held in Columbus in June. But character matters. Are we good enough for liberty? Without character, a free society is not just unlikely, it's impossible. We talk about, the same, if we don't stand for something, sooner or later we have to say enough is enough. I mean, do we continue to encourage people to rip up those voter registration? I would love to see that happen, quite honestly. I would love to see Republicans, seriously. I would love to see a big envelope go to Senator Smucker in Harrisburg and say, you know what, we'll re-up again for maybe the next primary or next election, but what you stand for is not what I stand for. I went overseas. I joined the military. I fought to have a constitution that we stand for something, that our representatives, I would hope, stand for something. And we all know that these barriers are put in place. Frank, I know you're shaking your head. Go ahead.
Well, there's another side to that, Lou. You're asking people to rip up their voter registration card. I would argue just the opposite. It's time to hijack these parties. It's time to get all the independents, libertarians everywhere to register as a Republican and hijack the party. Let's bounce these people out of there.
My chest.
Let's use.
I'm having a big one, Michael.
Let's use their primary against them.
Well, we can worry about that for the next primary, and we can have this conversation, and we'll consider that. X, what are you thinking? You having the big one there too, or what?
I'm totally with Frank on this.
Oh, jeez!
Hijack the party. Come on.
With a small group of people, you could take it over and start to have an influence in a way that goes beyond the party bosses. Remember, they can pick who they want to run for their candidate of choice, but for us, the big key is what can we do to really have an influence? And guess what? It's not going to be in the general election most of the time. A lot of times, the biggest influence you have is who that primary person is.
Right.
So if you only need 10 cents to influence $1, well then, boy oh boy, that's great. That's good to know. Now you know that it's possible to the communist socialists have been doing this with the Democratic Party for years. They've been organized. They get in there. They relabel themselves as progressives. So
progressives, right? That's a great word. The progressives.
Okay, and now they're in power. What do you think? What's Obama? Don't kid yourself. If anything, he's more of a corporatist. But so many of the people around him and stuff. If you were to sit there and go through a checklist of, what do communists believe, what do socialists believe, and the answer, they'd all check off those boxes. But they play a hoodwink game of, let's relabel it freedom. We'll call it Freedom Party or whatever. And then what we'll do is we'll call it the puppy dogs and Unicorn Bill, or the Patriot Act. Everything's about renaming things.
It
so
is.
It's
all in the name.
Call yourselves. Yeah, I know. That's the idea. So we go in, use your influence. If 10 cents can buy you $1, then might as well jump all over it right now because they've opened up the barn door for you to drive a semi-truck through and cause some real changes in there.
That's right.
Michael, what are you thinking here before we take a quick break?
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking, just real brief, there was a congressman from Florida, and this goes back to X's point, that was a discussion on YouTube, and of course he is of Cuban descent, and talking about this immigration and open-door policies, et cetera, et cetera. But his statement was, see, communism works. And he was talking about jobs being created and safety being created in parts of Texas because of illegal immigration. So he even came out and said, see, communism works. Of course, he's backtracking on this, but this really goes right back to X's point. This is exactly what they're thinking. They just call it progressive.
Michael, you hold that thought. We'll be back. You're listening to Sanity Check, 94.3 FM The Talker.
As we roll down this unfamiliar road, and although this wave is stringing us along, just know you're not alone, 'cause I'm gonna make this place your home.
This is our home, 94.3 FM The Talker. This is Sanity Check. Michael, I'm showing off one of my Gold Butte T-shirts, which you could buy on Muckraker News, our store, Muckraker Trading Post. That's what it is. So you could go to Muckraker News, or you go to Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, IG. You could go to our store and help support what we're doing. We're certainly asking folks to, if you like what we're doing, it always helps to have a little funding behind us. So,
Lou, were you mispronouncing my city on purpose, or are you just trying to say something about the corner bars?
Wilkes-Barre. Well, I keep hearing it all different ways. So how does let's get that right out now? How do you
Wilkes-Barre?
Wilkes-Barre. Michael, lifelong resident, same thing.
Wilkes-Barre.
Wilkes-Barre, you see? I like that. Wilkes-Barre.
Wilkes-Barre.
Well, I don't know where that came from.
Because we have a bar on every neighborhood corner.
So, Michael, this is our home, and this is a great conversation. It's good to be able to come on here each Saturday morning, even though it is the fastest hour in radio. I got to say that. But just the ability to come on and get these conversations out, and certainly, folks, you could call 888-577-4487. This is Sanity Check. But it's an interesting conversation, Mike, and character matters. We talk about this all the time. Certainly, your moral fiber, where we're going. It seems as though so much of this has slipped away, and just I think a lot of what's happened, not only just with the primaries, but voter, I guess you call it voter apathy. For one, I think a lot of people have just lost their faith in our system. Certainly the court system. I got to tell you, Mike, I have all kinds of notes that I thought I was going to get to today, but it is an absolute cesspool what has happened in our court systems. One case after another case, it's just mind-blowing to me. It really is. And there's no oversight. So we do have to elect people in this legislature process coming up now that will actually have the courage and the fortitude to stand up not only to their parties, but also to introduce legislation that is not going to be popular. We have Greenleaf. We talked about that. He heads the judiciary for the Republicans, once again, only because the Republicans control the state Senate and House in Harrisburg. But I believe 80% of his donations come from the Bar Association. And, if we continue to... Well, we know why it's happening.
Right.
I mean, it's, and I did write something down, Mike, and we'll get back to what you were saying before, or we could just get back to, the whole character matters. But I got to tell you, the next judge election, if I hear they get the endorsement or nod from the police association, I'm done. That to me right there. No, Frank, I'm serious. You're laughing. But you know what? A judge is supposed to be impartial. I mean, we have so many of these things. It's almost like the police go in and there's like this just a wink and a nod that they say what they're saying, and the judge automatically has to agree. A judge is supposed to be impartial and look at these things impartially.
They never do. The police officer is telling the truth from the get-go, and they don't care. Right. You could have a dash cam on your car that filmed every minute of the stop, everything, and the police officer could be lying under oath, and they would say that video's wrong. The officer wouldn't lie.
Lying under oath. There you go.
Like it's never happened.
And we know a story that we're looking right now that there is some really serious perjury stuff going on, and we're not at liberty to talk about it right now, Michael. But I think that we're throwing some subjects out here, but I think it needs to be talked about. Right. I mean, if you're a judge, you hear it all the time. They got the endorsement from the PBA. Right. Why? Why should that right there should be the death knell for anybody to say there's no way that, that's not the way it's supposed to be.
It's going to create a bias.
It would create a bias.
Right. And that's something we don't want from a judge.
You would think. Michael, will take you first, and then we'll take X.
Lou, you just, through this whole conversation, I thought you mentioned a statement about how the Republicans essentially run the state right now. They have the House.
Right, because they're in control.
And they're in control. So I want to ask again, those dedicated Republicans out there, has anything changed? I see taxation continuing to go up.
More laws. That's the first thing, Michael.
More laws?
More laws. We put more laws on the book. We have to get more laws. I'm thinking every time a law comes on, I'm getting screwed somewhere.
Yeah, you certainly are. So you got more laws, more taxation,
more laws,
friendly. So tell me, all you committed Pennsylvania Republicans out there, what's changed? Nothing has changed. It's the same old D's and the R's getting together to fulfill their agendas. That's really much how it goes. So it's so important to get out there to vote, but don't think you have to vote for what you typically would vote for, though.
And yet I'm going to look at individuals. I'm going to look at each individual's. I got to tell you, there's a lot of new faces coming up. Any new faces I'm voting for.
Right.
I can tell you right now.
Stop voting straight party, people. Honest to God, if it just so happens that you vote for everyone on the Democratic ticket because you want to vote for those people, do it individually. Read the names there and make sure that those are the folks you want to vote for. But for the love of God, stop hitting that straight party ticket.
And the problem is, Michael, I would have to think that the audience that's listening to this radio show in the morning probably, Saturday mornings probably do that. So once again, the reason we started the Independent Gazette, and we're still small, and we said it was a long-term project. It was a 2014, 2016 project. It was to try to get information into what they call low information voters, which I think most people are, only because we're getting news from low information,
Right. Like we're trying to be kept dumbed down.
Yeah. X, what are you thinking?
Always reminded of the fact that we make fun of other countries, but let's not forget that we and human nature is the same all over the entire world. Never make fun of another country because of their politics, because if you really look into the heart of our politics, we're just as corrupt.
Yeah, and we're corrupt because of we're bought and sold for the media. Once again, I think we mentioned that the other day, that the media should be adversarial towards politicians. We shouldn't be holding hands with them. It shouldn't be like we're best buddies.
No, and the media should have the responsibility to ask the tough questions. They shouldn't be softballing anything to anyone. But we see that all the time as well.
When we talk about low information voters, Mike, it's because we have low information media.
Intentionally, though, Lou. Intentional.
How's that, John? Low information media.
You have to become a good parent. You got to be a parent. You can't be your kid's friend. Well, guess what? In order to have an effective press, you have to be the press. You can't be the administration's friend.
There you go. Frank, we're as always, we're flying down. I think last week we said we had 10 seconds. You got about 20 seconds or something. What are your last thoughts here?
Just wake up,
I know
people.
nothing.
Yeah, no, I
know something.
I know enough to say, wake up, people. Stop following the masses.
Wake up, Wilkes-Barre.
Just wake up, everybody.
Yeah, but isn't that's a great blog site, right?
That is. Wake Up Wilkes-Barre.
Wake up, Wilkes-Barre, folks. I encourage you to go there if you need just a good laugh. Sometimes just a good belly laugh.
It's the truth with humor.
WakeUpWilkes-Barre.com. WakeUpWilkes-Barre.com. Once again, we'll encourage folks to go to Muckraker News. We have the Muckraker Trading Post on there, Michael. Folks could, we just keep building on our store products, so we encourage folks to go there. They could certainly take a subscription out to the newspaper, and it certainly helps us as we move forward, Michael. Wilkes-Barre, Scranton IG. You could find certainly about the hacked email story there. We encourage folks to go there. Michael, we're getting down to the end, down to the last 38, 35, 36 seconds. Your last thoughts and your signature sign-off.
Last thoughts is just keep fighting the fight, and God bless all.
God bless everybody. We'll see you next week. Sanity Check.